Hey folks, welcome to our Friday event on ChatGPT Plus. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, we got a great group. There's quite a bit of banter going on in the chat area, which I deeply appreciate. ChatGPT has been out and really widely available for the better part of a year. We're late into 2023. It made a big splash in late 2022. We are going to be focused on the plus version of ChatGPT, and you may or may not be a user of ChatGPT Plus. That's absolutely fine. I am not here to sway you towards uh, getting the subscriber version, but what this discussion can be is eye-opening towards the capability of artificial intelligence for professions. Specifically, we're going to look at the profession of being an IT pro, and so we've got the agenda here. We are going to talk about ChatGPT. We're going to talk about the features of it, how they pertain to us. We're going to have some demonstrations that allow us to see some capabilities. And even this week, we saw some really exciting stuff come out from Google with Gemini and some crazy capabilities. Some of the things we'll show actually hint at even some of the bleeding edge stuff that Google is working on. Might take on a slightly different aesthetic. But that said, let's talk about ChatGPT. What is your experience? There is, to be very, very clear, I don't expect any experience with ChatGPT. You don't need a login. You certainly don't have to have a subscription to the features that we're going to demonstrate today. But I don't know what you came in with in terms of what your knowledge is, and any and all answers are appropriate, but your answers will help you inform the other people in the audience as well as me. So, what is your experience level? And I'll tell you that I was a little resistant to ChatGPT last year. One of the people that is here supporting me in the background, Russ, was like, you got to get into this," and that was last year, and it took me about 4 weeks to get into it. And it'll be interesting. I like what Patrick said. Very casual. Tested a few things, right? That's very common. Zero, or use it daily. And there are some days when I am way more productive through my utilization of ChatGPT. I don't necessarily use it daily purposefully. Sometimes I make joke stuff. But there are some days that is transformative for me. Okay. So this is not the first discussion of ChatGPT that we've had in these series of events. And we've actually had another event where we demonstrated just ChatGPT vanilla for IT professionals. And I want to recap some of those things. And I'm going to use that as a stepping stone to show you, because I can now see that there are a lot of people out there, casual or zero utilization, which is great. I kind of planned for that. I kind of assumed it. Okay. So I do have an IT background. My biggest focus in IT specifically is networking and Cisco networking. And so some of my demonstrations are going to have a little bit of a Cisco slant. Just go with me on that. I don't expect you to be a Cisco professional. Want you to see like the high level stuff. Okay, I want you to see what we've got in terms of what we would say are the capabilities of ChatGPT for IT professionals. Okay. Network configurations, troubleshooting, documentation, difficult concepts. Now, that's not going to be our focus, but I'm just going to roll through a few demonstrations so you go, oh, I've seen it. I kind of know how it works. And then we're going to see some plus. That's the title of this event. The plus capability, which is the subscriber version, and it goes beyond. It's going to be enhancement, and we'll have some fun with it. Okay. So let's get into ChatGPT. Here I am logged in to the interface, and I am a plus version subscriber. And one of the things that I want to show you is just how robust this is. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you how to work with it. I'm in a fresh chat, I'm going to take myself off screen because I'm always going to be battling for a place to put myself. But I'm going to say, can you write for me a server security policy for my small business? Okay, so a server security policy is going to come out and begin to write a policy for me. Okay, it's going to write a policy for me. Let me go back and show you an example. And it's kicking out the policy right now, and it's going to go through. Okay, it's going to go through. This is an artificial intelligence engine, which is text to text. Fundamentally, it breaks that in some cases, but text in and text out. So what I asked it was, hey, can you write for me a server security policy? So IT professionals of all levels have to be mindful and, in some cases, work with security policy. Now, this is the sort of thing that we might do as a proof of concept. Okay. And we go, all right, this is a little bit, maybe it's a little bit too high level. Um, Maybe it's a little bit too high level. And you might have some concern. You might have some concern that this is not effective. It's artificially intelligence created, which has pros and cons. So, what I want to do right now is I want to show you what would be considered a staple security policy. Okay. What would be a staple security policy? We got the question, can you export to Word? You can export, it's not really built for exporting natively, but you can copy and paste pretty well. And sometimes you might actually prompt it to say, please write it in an HTML, create HTML output. I actually, I find that sometimes is useful in order to regenerate the native format. You can also ask it to write in Markdown. So the big two ways of affecting the formatting is, for me at least, is HTML, which is one way to go, and Markdown. It'll create a Markdown block for you. Okay, so this is a SANS security policy, and SANS, for anybody who is on the periphery or deep into networking, they're very respected. Okay, this would be a good boilerplate version of it. Now, what we can do is we can challenge ChatGPT with this. Can you tell me how this differs from this security policy? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call up that security policy. This is the same one. I downloaded it ahead of time. Okay. I've downloaded ahead of time, and I'm going to upload it. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm asking for a second opinion almost. Okay. I'm going to ask it to compare the two. Okay. So it's actually going to read the PDF. This is a new native capability, and it's going to tell me whatever it is it's going to that is able to glean. Okay. So this is one kind of, here we're just kind of warming up to ChatGPT, and we could say, all right, this security policy document differs in these ways. Okay. Now, when we are thinking about utilizing this artificial intelligence engine, yes, you could create IT documentation. You could use it for a lot of things. And we're going to talk about some of the caveats. I'm not encouraging you to just go wild with this. Okay. That is absolutely not the idea. We can use it to create network configurations and troubleshoot. Also, let's get into a good challenging configuration for me. Like I said, I'm a Cisco professional, and I might use this to create a config, a boilerplate config that I'm going to work through that's pretty long. And I'm going to use it to create a configuration for an IPsec tunnel. Okay. So I'm going to go, and for those of you who haven't seen this before, the way that this really works is you are going to have threads. So you could almost think of this as teams. On the left-hand side, in Teams, you've got different threads, and maybe you're like a Discord user. Discord doesn't, uh, you've got threads there too. I'm going to create a new chat. This is ChatGPT. I'm going to create a new chat, and I did so by going here, and I made a fresh conversation with ChatGPT. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to show you that I have prepared some instructions that are going to tell it. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of expose you to the fact that this can do a lot. Like, for the people who have just dabbled with this, one of the things that's interesting is when you dabble with it, you don't kind of force yourself to see all the weird bells and whistles. So I actually have crafted some instructions. Now, I could have put these instructions inside of my prompt. And what the instructions do is they're going to tell us, hey, I've got these IP addresses, this is my devices, and I want you to behave this way. Okay. One of the things that, certainly you can ask ChatGPT to do is bend over backwards to do something. So that is now, I'm going to flip the switch. I'm going to turn that on. Okay. So I gave it things like the IP addresses of my environment, which are going to be important for my IPsec tunnel. And I'm going to say, create the configuration for an IPsec VTI tunnel between R1 and branch. These are two routers. They're going to be the endpoints in our discussion. And I've given it information that these are Cisco devices. I've given it information about the IP addressing. And it's going to go through and it's going to provide a configuration. And this isn't something that I would just blindly trust, okay? I wouldn't just blindly trust this output. But what you can see is this configuration it wouldn't be something that would be typical for an individual to just rattle off. There have been times when I was classified as a Cisco expert, okay? And certifications along with that. This wouldn't be one of the configurations that I'd just easily be able to rattle off. I understand it, okay? But it's got the 5 different parts, like phase 1 configuration, key between the devices, the transform set, and it's mindful of the IP addresses that I provided through the configuration. Really crazy stuff. And by the way, there's nothing here that looks offensive to me. I'd plug it in to a laboratory environment. But now let me show you something else. This is where I actually think it's even more useful, and that is for troubleshooting. Okay, so if you're an IT professional, you've all tried to deploy something and it didn't work right. Okay, that is the nature. That is the nature of I was in CCNA teaching IPX, SPX, that 80-bit address that is IPX, SPX, or the IPX address. Okay, so if you're working with anything in the real world, when you do it the first time, you're crossing your fingers and you're wondering, is this actually going to work for me? Okay, and so uh, uh, let's say, what could break this configuration? Okay, what could break this configuration? And how would I look for it? Okay, this is where we could be tremendously benefited by a second opinion. What's really interesting about this is it is loaded with a tremendous amount of technical information. Okay. Now, some of it might be stale, but there's some areas that don't move that quickly in IT. And actually, Cisco networking is one of them. I love, I love the fact that if you've ever touched IPsec tunnels in Cisco. You probably have used one or two of these show or debug commands, but they're probably not on the tip of your tongue. And it is so useful to see what these are. It's like, all right, it's not working. And when you're flying blind and you don't know how to do when you don't know how to remediate a configuration, we know it may not work the first time around. We now have a little bit of help. Okay. So that's to warm us up. That is to warm us up to our discussion. But today we are going to go and see some things. I kind of hinted at one of them, but let's talk about GPT Plus. Before I get deep in this, please understand I am not advocating for getting the license. I'm not advocating for using it in in an unprofessional manner. I'm not advocating for using it to do your job. And we have to be thoughtful. It's just like it's technology. If we get a Tesla or another self-driving car, we're not going to use it to fall asleep to make up the difference in our sleep patterns. We can't be asleep at the wheel. We have to assume that everything that we get from ChatGPT could be erroneous. And I have personally seen erroneous output and not recognized it as erroneous output at first. And that is what we call hallucination. Now it's getting better. GPT-4 is way, way better, but it is absolutely capable of mistakes. But we're human beings too. We're capable of mistakes. So it's not like we're not going to use the technology just because it could make a mistake, but it is absolutely going to influence how we use that technology. Okay. By the way, ChatGPT, bad at math, could have bias as well. Okay. Absolutely, it has bias. But we're not gonna worry about those things today. Okay. So here's some things that we're gonna get into. And these are for the paid subscriber version, which happens to be ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 a month. Um, Again, not advocating that you go out and get it, but there's some things about it that do make this very, very significant. And we got a question: how does a hallucination occur? Let's talk about that. Okay, and I'm going to talk about it in a fairly accurate way. Okay, so ChatGPT and other generative AI is unconcerned about the process in which it uses to give you an answer. It is unconcerned about the quality of the answer. All it is doing is it's really the equivalent of AI autocomplete. AI autocomplete, like the autocomplete on your phone. It looks at something and then kicks out whatever it thinks is the best thing based on what it has. But it is imperfect. It is imperfect. So it is not focused on perfection. It is focused on its training data and how that training data has influenced what is called the large language model. And so you're plugged into this very, very powerful algorithm. But until we get much, much, much more sophisticated AI, all it is this thing that kicks out some output that is aesthetically pleasing to the artificial intelligence engine and hopefully to us as well. Okay. Aesthetically pleasing in terms of the letters and the combinations of words, sentences, and things like that. Very, very powerful, but it's absolutely capable of generating errors, and it'll warn you. This is part of what OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA are all trying to stamp out. Okay, so GPT is better when you're working with the Plus version because you have access to version 4, which is wildly better than the version that came out last year, which was GPT 3. and 3.5. If you don't have the subscriber version, you're working with 3.5, and it is not nearly as accurate. Okay. I would say GPT 3.5, I'd be very, very cautious about using it in any kind of production sense, production in or outside of IT. Okay. If you're going to use it for purposefully, probably get the plus version. It can now put images. But we got a lot of people supporting our webinar, and I would just want to show you something. Okay, I think I saved this. Uh, I had it create an image. I was teaching a networking class, and uh, this is the image generation for a toner and probe. And it's like the image generation, I did a webinar on it last week, okay? It's not great for IT professionals, okay? This is like comically bad. Like, I'm not sure what the dude is doing with the toner. This environment is scary. Get me out of it. So, image generation, it's not really great for IT professionals. And if you can find a good purpose for IT pros, that's great. But it actually will take images, and we are going to use that, and we're going to use it very, very. You know, we talk about this a lot on our team, and this is one of the things that is super cool and is useful. Okay, and I'll demonstrate how. You can create. Any of you created a custom GPT? This is a new capability. It's been out. Okay, so we're in December. It's been out about 2 months. Okay. This is, yeah, John says no vaping in the server room. I mean, it looked like an e-cig to me. Um, Custom GPT creation. This is a super big deal, okay? So I'll demonstrate this, and I've got some custom GPTs that we're going to use. But here's the thing. Let's say there's somebody in your organization that is good with ChatGPT, better than others, at least for certain things. What they can do is they can craft a prompt, which is how you influence what you get out of it and what it's going to do for you. And you can bake that and share that amongst other team members. The other team members also have to have ChatGPT Plus, by the way. But we're going to talk about how we are going to use this. And there's some things that came out just this week that I think make this even more timely. Specifically, an update from McDonald's, and something that I think is very interesting that McDonald's is doing. Okay, we're not going to get into plugins. I don't think they're as exciting. We're going to see the code interpreter kick off in one of my demonstrations, and this is a very intriguing feature. I've demonstrated it a lot, and it is situational, and it speaks to some future capability of ChatGPT. Let's go into this, okay? Let's have some fun, okay? Let's have some fun with ChatGPT. Okay. So, all right. So I said something about these things called custom GPTs, okay? These little areas on the left-hand side are a relatively new feature, few months old, and I've created some crafted prompts that are intended for a purpose. Okay, so this is an IT event. Most IT people are at least tangential to a technology and a tool called Wireshark. Okay, great packet capture tool, heavily used, and the PCAP files are those uh, that the files that it ingests, the typical file that it ingests. For people who just want to see how this works, you can create your own GPT. And if you are that individual on your team that's really good and your other people in the team aren't so good, you can make these GPTs for them. You're like, here's what I want you to do. And we'll give you a few examples. But all it is baking a prompt for yourself to use and for other people to use. So it's a shareable, crafted way of using ChatGPT. Really, really cool stuff. And so what I did is I created this and it just says, help me process a PCAP file. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll down just so you can see that I have the code interpreter enabled. And this is going to be important because my demonstration is probably going to kick off this thing. Now, one of the interesting aspects of ChatGPT is that it can write code. It absolutely can write code, and it's getting better and better. And the code interpreter is a capability that anybody can use. You don't have to be a coder. And I'm like a novice of coders, and I certainly wouldn't consider myself one. But you don't have to be a coder at all to use it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. Now, this demonstration, I go here, and we're going to be in a fresh prompt for my Wireshark GPT. And what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to upload. I'm going to upload an NTP PCAP file. This is a PCAP file for network time protocol. You know, the thing that synchronizes time, uses port 123, has stratum levels, all that stuff. Okay. Really important protocol for IT, essential for secure environments, helpful to set the time on salespeople's computers so they don't miss a meeting. Okay. So help me analyze this file. Okay, so this is a PCAP file. I haven't done anything with it. I actually got it straight from wireshark.org. And this is going to, this should kick off, say, um, help me do number 3. There we go. Okay, good. So what it's going to do, and I'm going to open this up, and it is writing code. It is writing Python code for the analysis of this. And it's writing Python code for the analysis of this. And look at how, I mean, this is not like, hey, let's learn Python today. This is what is going on. And it says error analyzing, okay? Error analyzing. It says Python doesn't have this particular library, okay? Now, it's actually it's gonna try it a few times with different libraries. And it doesn't have PyShark installed either. So if you worked with Python at all, a lot of the glory of Python is there are all these installable libraries and you can plug in, but their backend environment, if you go up to OpenAI, they've basically instantiated an environment for this code to run, but they didn't load in all of the different libraries. So this is a fail, right? But it's a really cool fail in that it's trying to do some things that is right on the edge of being wild, okay? Now, I want to remind you of something. Let's take this a different approach, okay? I'm going to crack open Wireshark, and I'm just going to screenshot it. Okay? Now, for anybody who's been in computers for a bit, you know that there's things like OCR, optical character recognition, and I'm just going to paste this in. Okay? Now, first, prior to a few years ago, this would have been problematic to even convert it consistently to the right text, okay? So I'm going to take this in, okay? Make sure it's copied to the clipboard. Go back to ChatGPT, and I'm going to paste it in that image, okay? So I did it as a PCAP file. That honestly, that would have been better, but I'm going to paste it in as, well, just a snapshot. Now, the question is, can it actually read it? And can it do anything meaningful based on that? let's say, and we have to, you know, we don't most IT professionals don't live their life looking at Wireshark. Now, there are some people who maybe they do. Okay. Maybe they do because they're under the hood looking at tuning an application and the communication that happens on an application. But this is the output merely from a screenshot. It is able to read it and then express it, interpret it. And so imagine yourself, like, I'm always seeing protocols for the first time in Wireshark, and I usually don't even like, I'm like, oh, this protocol, that's not the one I'm looking for. But you could use this to enumerate a protocol and even explain. Now, let me show you something. I was chatting with another network professional in the background, and I asked him, hey, do you know what symmetric passive means? Now, we both teach network time protocols, set it up, use it, love it. But we were both like, you know what? I don't know what this is. Russ said, I don't know what it is either. By the way, it shows us their stratum level. Okay. So I could ask it also, just, uh, I could ask it, what does symmetric passive mean? I mean, if you've looked at Wireshark at all, there's just like gobs of detail that you're probably not going. I mean, we're not reference books. Even if we're an expert, we're not trying to become an expert. And it gives an absolute fantastic explanation of the modality. Oh, symmetric can act as a server and client. Sure, I've seen that. I've worked with that. And so what we've just seen is one way to use the image ingest functionality of ChatGPT. Okay. Now, internally in the background, we've also discussed how we might use these. Okay. You could ask it, hey, you could give it a network topology screenshot. This was one of the first ways that we did it internally. Take a screen cap of like a Cisco network topology and say, hey, give me the config for this. And we were surprised at how good the results are. Okay. For me, I think it's very practical to think, okay, I'm in the weeds. I'm gonna copy this in. Help me out. Help me understand what's going on here. I don't want to look this up. I don't want to waste 15 minutes when I can do it in about a minute. Okay. So something else that is top of mind for me is IPv6. Okay. And I was given a wake up call by one of my colleagues, and I've been learning about IPv6, working with it since the 90s. And we all think to ourselves, oh no, not another IPv6 discussion because we've heard about it. It's like crying wolf. Well, it's coming. And part of it is in 2025, I'm going to scroll down so you can see what I'm highlighting. There's a lot of mandates for this. And I start to think, how am I ever going to get ready for this? So this was my actual workflow a few weeks ago. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to start reading up on specifically, I can build IPv6 connectivity, no problem. Okay. But what I'm not super aware of is the security for IPv6. Okay. So started to dig into RFCs as we might need to on occasion. I mean, RFCs come in all shapes and sizes. Some are useless, some are tremendously incredible. This is actually one of the best RFCs. It is the best RFC that I've ever read, this specific one. Now, how are we going to tie this to ChatGPT? Well, one of the things that honestly is squarely on my plate over the next year is scaling up on this. Okay. And so, one of the interesting things that you can do with ChatGPT is I'm going to, actually, I'll build a GPT from scratch. Now, I've got one of these baked. I'm going to create a GPT. Now, all this is, and this is just a little helper. You want to hit configure. You can create a name, which is arbitrary. Don't use company names. Like if you put in like Cisco or Microsoft, it's going to bark at you because they want to reserve those for Cisco and Microsoft apparently. And you can create a description, which is cosmetic, and then instructions. But here's what's interesting. This is a wildly powerful capability. What we have to understand is ChatGPT is baked with the training model and the training that it got. Okay. So when ChatGPT first came out, it was baked and it was a lot of the good part of the internet as a snapshot of like September 2021. It's now caught up a lot, but it isn't affected by specific documentation. That's a huge challenge for implementation. The challenge is, how do you give it information? How do you give it significant information? Now, you can give a little bit of information inside of the prompt, okay? That is information, so to speak. But what you can do is you can load in a document of your choosing. You can load in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the RFC, okay? I'm going to upload that RFC right here. And I think I've got it. Do I have it? Uh, Thought I had it. Let's go over here. No problem. Download. Okay. I'm looking for the download button. Let's go back. I'll download it as a PDF. Save it to my computer. RFC, that looks right. Go back. Upload files. Now these can break by the on occasion. Just keep on trying it, okay? If it doesn't. But it will ingest PDFs. It'll ingest documents. Okay, so now I've got my PDF uploaded. And if this were an RFC that was not part of the training of ChatGPT, you've now augmented it purposefully. And you can give it instructions to specifically look to it first. So you could look to say, I want you to use this if you don't have a better answer. I want you to look to it first. And you could create your own GPT from this. Why do I think this is useful for IT pros? Because we, as IT pros, have to be learning, right? So what are you learning? Are you learning Azure? Are you learning configuration of a specific device? Are you learning security? Are you in the weeds on something? We should generally be learning as much as possible, right? We're in the holiday season. It's a little bit harder to learn these days because we're already so busy. But this would allow me to have a sidekick that I can query and say, hey, I'm going to go back because I already had that one baked. Okay. I already had that one baked. And this is the fully baked version of that. And you could say, how do I secure, let's say, LANs for IPv6? This is actually a really big topic for IPv6. There are a lot of the rebaked old hacks for IPv4 that have been rehashed. So ARP attacks and DHCP attacks become neighbor discovery hacks, and this is a big deal. Okay. Yeah, and Hackerman is asking. Hackerman. Yep, absolutely. I'll show you. I mean, we'll throw it in the oven. We're going to crank it up to 800. It doesn't take a while. It's actually really, really quick. Okay. So what it's doing is it's looking through, it says searching my knowledge. This one isn't, a lot of these purple ones you can click on and it'll see it, like the code interpreter. This is looking through RFC 9099. and then it's going to go in. It's probably going to talk about some cool stuff that is going to be relevant for us. Okay, and now these become technologies that I have to get some experience with. And believe it or not, IPv6 is coming. And yeah, if you don't secure it, it's going to be a problem, right? It's kind of crazy that we're trying to push so rapidly towards this. Okay. So yeah, I'll show you how that was baked. So I'll create a new one, and I'm just going to go through this. Okay. Demo or event. Help me secure IPv6. Okay, so I'm going to do this pretty fast, and then I'll upload the file. That takes a little bit. Okay, so now, what are some of the other things we can do? We can add an image. Okay, we could add an image, and I do like to create like cool images. I do use Dolly for it, which is the image generation capability of OpenAI. Now, on the right-hand side, oops, I'm going to put myself back on, or I'm going to take you back to the demo. On the right-hand side, you see like an area where you can test it and see if it's working right. Okay. But here's where you bake it. Okay. So we're in right now December, and there's a store coming soon. It isn't out yet. I think it's supposed to be out in January. I think that's what I read a few days ago. Don't hold me to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake it for anyone with the link. Okay. Or maybe just me. And some of my GPTs are pretty good, but I'm just going to hit confirm and boom. I mean, it's not like it's easier than you would think. Okay. And it is ready. It's ready to go. Okay. Jeff, how large and how many docs could you upload? I actually don't know the size limit. I know that the code interpreter has a size limit of 100 megabits or megabytes, 100 megs. I'd guess it's pretty similar. Okay. I'd guess it's pretty similar. And I actually like this when there are fewer files. Just so, our experiences are you can kind of give it too much information. Maybe it works well for you, maybe it doesn't, but I would actually constrict it to only the necessary files. Okay. Ryan says 20 docs max. That's cool. Very, very good. We got a question. What privacy considerations are there when uploading files and data to ChatGPT? Okay. We're IT pros, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but let's talk about it because honestly, it's kind of a miss if I don't. Okay. So I'm going to go to settings and beta, and we're going to go to data controls. Okay. So here's kind of the deal. The first thing that I would tell you is don't put anything that is private information, sensitive information. Like, let's just say you're putting, information from your database in here, or customer information, credit card information. You should not put in anything here that you would not put on the web. Now, what have I done? I've put in an RFC. Well, those are like published, right? I'm actually using it in a way that is super safe, right? And super meaningful. I could use, and I'll show you some other cases where it's just public information. Now, there are some things you could do. You could say, do not use it for training. For us, we're IT pros. The reality is when you put information into ChatGPT, you are augmenting the large language model, and it can be used for training. Here's an example. You are a software developer, and you write some beautifully elegant code that is proprietary, purposeful, and an algorithm that is unique. You put that into ChatGPT. ChatGPT can gobble that up, and it'll recognize its beauty. And then it could kick that out to other people. And it's not trying to share it, but through its training, you're training it you are making it more knowledgeable. And if you are providing it unique knowledge, that can be essentially radiated. It can be emitted out through a prompt that triggers a similar output. So any chats that are put into ChatGPT should be assumed that they're like my stances don't put in anything proprietary or that isn't like public. Okay. Um, you can turn off the training by hitting that. Okay, there's a little button. I turned off the button and it killed all my history. I don't do anything like that. I mean, I do some fun stuff, but this is how to do it. I could delete my account. I can also um, clear off my chats, but I'm not going to do that because I have to revisit my chats on occasion. Okay, so quick little crash course on privacy because I do think that that's relevant for all of us. You should assume that your information is going out into the ether. It just definitely OpenAI is mindful of this. Okay, I'm not saying that they're careless with your data. You know, that's an opinion that I do not have. But it's also you must never be careless, and you must encourage everyone in your proximity inside of your organization, in your family circle, friend circle, not to stick stuff that's a secret, proprietary, confidential. We don't want to do that. Okay. So, all right, here we go. Jeff is asking, hey, I saw you emulate iOS. Can you, and I have a pretty good iOS emulator. Um, I haven't built one for Juniper. I've seen one built for Linux. I would imagine it would work pretty well for Juniper. It's going to work a little bit better for Cisco because it's such a known quantity and it's probably so beaten up with training because Cisco is a larger organization. They've probably created more documentation. But it should be capable of probably doing a decent job in emulating Juniper and things like that. Okay. Yeah, and actually Whitney's got this question about exporting. So you can export. I've never actually gone through this, but there's an export button for the chat history. Okay. So theoretically, yes. Never really played with it. Okay. Cool. All right. So yeah. I want to show you one more thing. What I'd like to, and some of these things I do think are timely. You know, we're in 2023, the tail end. IPv6 is coming. Another thing that came out this year, actually this week, is I was going to say Mr. Pickles, but it's Ask Pickles. Okay. And this is sneaky. Now, we've for anybody who's been in IT for a while, we can laugh at this concept because we have Clippy. We all know Clippy. This is something that because McDonald's thinks it's a good idea, I'm probably going to say it is a good idea. And the idea of this is McDonald's got together with Google. Google helped essentially build a chat bot for operation of their equipment. Okay. Now, we in IT have the same duties. Okay. We in IT have the same duties. We have to work with equipment. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we're not working with a refrigerator or a point of sale system or, uh, you know, whatever it is. But we have to work with equipment, and honestly, there's just such a diversity of equipment that it's a pain. So I want to give you some examples of uses of this. Let's say We are an MSP. And we have a variety of equipment that is slowing our technicians down. And there's a huge amount of manuals that they have to sort through. So I'm going to go to this chat, and it is a helper that is loaded with the manual for an uninterruptible power supply, a UPS, battery backup, right? Now, who's studied battery backups and made that like their passion? I'm not aware of anybody. I'm sure there are people who love this, but most IT pros, this is a necessary evil, very useful when it works. And so, what we could do is we could ask it, how do I replace the battery? And you could certainly come up with things that are more useful, but this could be a way to streamline the productivity of your individuals. Load it up with manuals, and this is equivalent to what McDonald's did with Google, but you could do it without it. I wonder how much McDonald's actually spent doing that, because now just a baked-in capability, okay? And it will take advantage of the documentation that it has. I've got another, I was, one of the things that I have to do occasionally is skill backup on like Cisco firewalls. And it's like just one of those things. It's the opposite of riding a bike. It's like ride a bike and forget that I ever was able to ride a bike. And so I loaded up the manual for Cisco Firepower, which is 1,000 pages long. And let's say, how do I turn off HA on FTD through the CLI? And so you can load it up with manuals and kicking off the knowledge base and searching, and yeah, it's a 1,000-page manual. Great. I'd rather have this at my side. Now, I'm gonna look at it, and let's see here. I know it's there. How do I? Actually, let's say, what is the default password for FMC? Give it another chance. Sure, I could go into the manual and find it manually. But I've scrolled through that manual like 20 times. Oh, this is not doing a good job. What is the default administrator user? Actually did this earlier. Let me see if I can find that same chat. These things are bleeding edge, right? There we go. This is actually in the same area. They do force you to change the password as well. Okay. So we've had some good questions come up from the group. I want to go back to our slides because I want to show you what we did. Okay. So a few things. Let's go back here. Image input is pretty useful. I took an image from Wireshark, but you could ask it to maybe explain some screen. Maybe it's a syslog file that you're looking at, a different type of information. Dolly is not super useful for IT pros yet, in my opinion. We created some custom GPTs. This is things like load up manuals so that you can query against those manuals. I loaded up a manual, RFCs, didn't use plugins. We fired off the code interpreter. That's when I That's when I loaded a PCAP file, but the PyShark library is not part of it. But Code Interpreter is actually a lot more powerful than I showed off today. And I've built tools, like I've had it build availability testing tool in Python and run it, and it worked great. Okay, so there's some really cool things that IT pros can do. I think one of the most useful things, just to be really frank, you can use it personally for the image input, and creating GPTs is something you can do for others that maybe are just not that haven't perfected the art of crafting prompts and things like that, which does take some time and some blood, sweat, and tears. And so, yeah. So hopefully you got something out of the 55 minutes that we spent together. Thanks, by the way, for showing up and all the great participation that we had from you folks. If you are not available or not aware of who Stormwind is, we're a training company. We do events like this over the web, really IT, project management, cybersecurity, cloud-centric. We've got some new offerings coming out next year, too. We've got a lot of discussions of artificial intelligence and classes in artificial intelligence, too. And I say this because, hey, we're a training company, and this is how we do things. If you or somebody in your periphery wants to get into product management, cybersecurity, cloud, IT, artificial intelligence, take a look at our website. Go to stormwindstudios.com. Stormwindstudios.com. We hit courses. You can nav to all the vendors that we teach to, all the different courses. Great website. And you can hit up Mike Fajan, who's one of our enterprise sales reps, to learn a little bit more about what we do and how you can get you or somebody you know into a training class. Okay. So, hey, it's been a hoot, and I really appreciate you folks joining us, and hope to see you in another event with us or another class with us soon. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your Friday.